Right. So I'm not entirely certain if you can see me. If you can see me, if you can hear me, then somebody message me here and just tell me what's occurring so that I know. Because, well, it's all gone a bit mad. It's been the most beautiful day, as you can appreciate, and for reasons better known to somebody else, obviously the world has now decided that it's going to rain. Not only is it going to rain, but it's going to be very serious rain, thunder, lightning, you name it, the whole 9 yards. And consequently, we had a big thunderstorm and a huge clap of lightning. I'm looking at the window that is above the room here, and there was a massive clap of thunder, and the laptop just decided to stop. So I must apologise if you are aware of anything that was going on and thought, right, I'll settle down to watch this. Then nothing happened. But anyway, so that's what's happened here. So I'm just going to see what's occurring. So I've got some live chat in some shape or form. If you can contact me, if you can leave a message, do by all means, and we'll see what's going on. If anybody can hear me, maybe they can message me and tell me that they can. That would be nice. Or maybe give me a like or something if that's the case, if you can hear me. So I just want to double check what's going on before I go into anything else here. Okay, that's fine. I'm just going to turn this round for a second. Oh, rotate. Orientation is locked, it says. So if you can hear me, hello, how are you doing? I know this wasn't the plan that I had for this, but I wanted to have a chat and pretty much talk to you with reference to the YouTube channel that I've been running since 2012. And really, what it was that, you know, I'd seen lots of other channels and I thought, well, they're quite interesting. And I wonder if I can do something with mine. And bearing in mind that mine was very, very basic, there wasn't really anything that I thought, well, I could do something with it, or maybe there's a particular direction that I was going to. I knew that I wanted to do something stunt based, but I didn't know what at this stage. And of course, I'd been writing about the stunt industry, and I'd been talking about the stunt industry for many years. So it was all very particular as far as the type of work and the type of writing that I was looking at doing. So making the transition from paper to a video blog, or certainly episodes, which is what it turned out to be, was slightly more complicated than I thought. But I saw a show called Stunt Stories, which was on YouTube, and Stunt Stories was a collection of wonderful anecdotes and stories by a stuntman called Corey Eubanks. And if you are familiar with Corey Eubanks, or you don't know who he is, check him out. CoreyEubanks. And what he had done was that he'd been a stuntman for many, many years in Hollywood. And what he had done is created a channel based on the action that he'd done over the years. And more importantly, some of those great stories around what he was doing. So he was on Dukes of Hazzard, he was on The Fall Guy, he was on movies, you name it, he was on it. And he had some great stories based around what there was. So, but it was a very, very easy setup. It was him, two camera, and just that was it, just the two of them together. And I liked the premise. A lot of the stuff that I'd seen in the past had been very elaborate, with lots of exciting visual aids in some shape or form. But he kept it really, really simple, and had managed to create a really nice one-on-one type of atmosphere. And that was what I kind of wanted to create. So I worked out a plan, which was after years of doing magazines and after years of doing, people can hear me. Alan Ramsey, how are you, friend? A thumbs up from you. Thank you very much. I'm glad that you're hearing me. That's good. And Daniel House is there as well. Hello, Daniel. So the idea was to work something along those lines. And I'd been writing magazines for years. I'd written a thing in 2000 called Stunts magazine, which had a really very short shelf life because it was primarily for insiders in the industry. The British Stunt Register at the time were very good at promoting the work that I was doing. Chris Webb, stuntman Chris Webb, was chairman of the committee at the time, and he was very kind in saying, well, send me some copies, which I did. And he said, I'll distribute them at committee meetings and maybe we can get some use from them that way. And that's how that happened. And I did eventually start to get phone calls from individuals or people that were connected in the business in some shape or form. And it was very nice to thank you for them for doing that. But I thought there was more to do. So when I got onto this idea of creating a channel, I used Corey Eubank's Stunt Stories as a platform, as a base. So I had to break it down I had to create a show. And I used stunt reels firstly. Chip Cobb, the deaf stuntman. That's I've just been asked to remember the stuntman from the Far Show. I do indeed. So the idea was to run it in sort of three sections. Stunt reels. Every stunt performer creates a reel over a period of time, particularly in the UK and Europe. In the States, they have a thing called stunt hustles, which is effectively interviews. You go along, a coordinator or a number of coordinators are going to be in a certain place at a certain time, and the performer goes along and presents their qualifications or their letters that have been signed off by other coordinators, or hi, I'm so and so, I'm available for work. I saw your stuff, I like it, I'd like to work with you, that sort of stuff. Whereas a lot of the rest of the time rely on reels, video reels, which will contain some of their best work, maybe some dialogue. They can do some acting, they can do some dialogue, and then their stunts. And there's masses of them. I mean, if you type in stunt reels and the year, you are going to find huge quantities of stunt reels. Some of them very, very good indeed. And some of them really, really overly long and unnecessary. We found that a lot of the best reels that we were looking at were probably 3 minutes long, if that. If there were any more than that, concentration tended to waver a bit, and you kind of lost the idea. But a lot of those better ones, those really good ones, were 3 minutes and less, and they were very, very good. So we went through a bunch of those. We picked one. I say we, it's me. I picked one, and I would go with that, a new one each week to watch and highlight certain bits and pieces and certain work that the performer was doing. Then we did a movie review. Whatever was new at the box office, we looked at it from the action point of view, from the stunt point of view. So we'd review the recent movies, but not on the plot or the story or the acting or the directing, but on the action. And then there would be a classic stunt sequence, taken from anywhere, from a movie or a television, but something that you go, they're open-jawed, slack-jawed when you look at it. So that was the idea. And that's what I did, and that was the general premise. And I did this really successfully for quite some time, but I realised that the shows were too long. They were half hour, 45 minutes. I had to bring them down and bring them down and bring them down because people's concentration would waver. And eventually I got them down to a 15-minute show, and I wasn't even in it. I used to present it, face-to-face used to present it, do all the links, and then I just did a voiceover because it was simpler for me to do it that way. And I got it down to about 15 minutes. So that was the idea, and I thought, right, I'm going to really make use of this. But what I found between 2012, when I started, and 2019 was that I had 3 strikes on a number of occasions, but not within 90 days. Now, if you work YouTube, you know how YouTube works. My show relied very much on clips. It relied on using clips from TV, using clips from film. And when you find a clip that you like, you want to, it's tricky to suddenly contact the production company and say, oh, by the way, I'm doing a YouTube channel and I'd very much like to use your clip, because 9 times out of 10, they'll go, certainly it'll cost you this much. And I'm, with a lot of channels, I suppose me and a bunch of others, we haven't got money to burn or throw about. It's nice every once in a while for somebody to go, if you want to use that, that's fine. And a lot of stunt people had said that. I must admit I've been very lucky in being approached by individuals saying, hey, I just did this thing, or I just did this stair fall, or I just did this car roll. Why don't you have it on the show? And so on the strength of that, I was lucky to be able to do it. But there was a huge amount of hoo-ha over copyright. And I'm not disputing copyright at all. But it does drive you to drink. So with that in mind, copyright is a very, very sticky area. And copyright of sound or copyright of the visual, it's a very, very complicated area. And I certainly didn't want to step on anybody's toes. I certainly didn't want to step on anybody's toes. But who I tell you what, let's do it again. I'm going to take a drink, and I want everybody, so that I can hear it, to go hoo-ha. Right, here we go. 3, 2, 1. My health to you all on this very warm Friday evening. And thank you very much. So from a copyright perspective, I never wanted to step on anybody's toes, but it was always going to happen. But I was confident. Everybody's doing their best Al Pacino. Hoo-ha! I was confident that there was a way that, because of what I was trying to do was promote the industry and promote the stunt industry particularly, that they were going to go, well, he's trying to do his best. That's very naive of me. I know that now. But at the time, that's what I thought would be a great idea to do. And I discovered very, very quickly that if I use a clip over here, somebody's going to slap you down very, very quickly indeed. And that's what happened. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, I'm just trying to think, within the first few months of having the show and it going out and regular and weekly, of course, I was doing it weekly. And within the first few months, I was being approached by a number of studios saying, you can't use this, you can't use that. I would get the YouTube thing every once in a while to say, there has been a claim to this particular clip. And you can live with that. That's okay. And they make it very clear in this email, or that's a message on YouTube, but they send it to you as an email in certain cases as well, that says there's been a claim, but don't worry. Don't worry, because it's going to be absolutely fine. You can just carry on. It's not going to affect your status whatsoever. But just to let you know that Universal, for instance, or Columbia Pictures have put a claim in against this particular clip. Fine, and you can accept that. There are also certain claims that work around sound or soundtrack, and particularly on some of the stunt reels that we touched on earlier on, and individual stunt performers will use a particular track that they think best highlights their work. And if they haven't asked permission for it, I'm assuming that they're getting a similar sort of message. The problem from my point of view is that if it's in the first 5 minutes of my show and that sound has been muted, so not only has the score, the actual musical accompaniment been muted, but also the sound from the reel itself has been muted. That makes life very difficult if you're trying to watch something. So, there's a lot of that as well. But you can cope with that to a point. This particular track's been removed, therefore you can't watch it if you are in, and it lists all of the countries where this particular clip will not be viewed. And some of the times you go, well, okay, this country, this country, this country, that's not so bad, I can live without that. But there are certain countries around the world that you want this particular clip to be seen, and you want it to be seen on your show. And if there is a copyright on the basis of these particular tracks, that can be complicated, unless of course you're watching a silent movie. And there are so far, and I've watched thousands of stunt reels over the years. Never seen a silent one. And I think that would be a very interesting idea. I have touched on that a couple of times with some other stunt performers, and I've said, have you thought of doing a silent stunt reel? And they've looked at me as though I'm on drugs or something. What? But I kind of, with little signs or a subtitle that comes up or a look into camera and then a subtitle, something weird and wonderful, but I think it might be a nice idea. So I had a copyright issue initially, but then it got worse. It got progressively worse. And the 3 strikes rule I was talking about goes like this. If you get 3 strikes, and by that you get 3 copyright infringement strikes within 90 days, that's you done. I mean, there is no, must go to jail, must, collect £200, do not pass go. No. This is not a temporary thing. You get 3 strikes in 90 days, boom, you're done. You have to create a whole brand new world for yourself if YouTube is something that you want to do. And it's raining, by the way. I don't know if you can hear that, but you may hear that. So I was lucky that I didn't get through. I have had 3 strikes, not in 90 days, but I am regularly informed by YouTube, you've got 3 strikes and you have to be very careful here. There's a great deal of pressure involved in that, I find, anyway. And so it's raining. Can you hear that? It's raining. Hottest day of the year, and it's pouring down with rain. So, I've had some particular complaints from Huddersfield. It's raining in Huddersfield too, folks. This is a stop press. Huddersfield are getting rain too. It must be a big cloud if it's going from Leicester to Huddersfield. Hang in there. Close the windows. Do your best. And it's red hot in Norfolk. Would you believe it? That's always the way, isn't it? I have had some great holidays down in Cromer, to name but a few places down in Norfolk. So as far as copyright's concerned, that was the issue there. Then, so you think, right, I've got my 3 strikes thing, but I'm prepared to, you have to be very, very careful now to make sure that your content is not really infringing on anything at all. Then I got an email from Paramount Studios. And this is not something that happens every day of the week. I didn't think so anyway. Turns out it is quite popular. But I wasn't aware of it. So when I got an email from Paramount Studios that said that I had used a clip, and not only had I used a clip, but it was a clip from a really well-known, it was Ben-Hur, right? I'd used was it 20th Century Fox? One or the other. But I had used a clip from Ben-Hur, and it was a very, very short clip in relation, of course, to the chariot race, which, of course, is one of the big action set pieces in the picture. If it was 30 seconds, I'd be very surprised. It was probably less than that, but it was in a montage. And I had used it, and I received what I thought was a very strongly worded email from this particular studio saying, "Oi, do you realise you've used one of our clips? And how dare you not ask us first to say, can I use this clip?" Which is great, but if I had gone to them and said, "I'm doing this and I'd like to use a clip," they'd say, "Oi, sling her up and use somebody else's clip." So I wouldn't have had permission to do so. But I thought it rather heavy-handed, if I'm perfectly honest with the whole thing, and their approach to the whole thing, which I thought was a great shame. And that happened on a number of occasions over the years. And so it's been a bit of an uphill struggle, I'll be perfectly honest. And when it was about 2013, 2014 that the last episode was aired, and I'd done a few specials, and in point of fact, it's a good question. Somebody's just asked me, is there a fair use policy? There probably is, but it's verbal. I wouldn't have thought for a moment that there is anything that is specific in writing to say, we are the company, we own these clips. However, as long as you say, I'm using... You do get that. You see a lot of YouTube clips that say, I don't own this clip. Doesn't make the blindest bit of difference. You're still airing it and you haven't asked anybody's permission. Therefore, you are liable with reference to the clip itself. Should you use the clip and should somebody, get the arse about the whole thing, well, you must accept that. And if they choose to go the heavy-handed route and slap you with some sort of writ, that's the deal, I'm afraid. I mean, it's a very, very... There's no fine line between the two. It is very, very clear as far as they're concerned. So about 2013, I'd done a few specials, and I was very lucky because I managed to do a special about Rocky Taylor, who you may know through the Bond films if you're a fan of the Bond pictures. Major stuntman who's worked tirelessly through the 1960s and still working today. And I did a show about him, which was about 45 minutes, something like that. He saw it, and he rang me and said, "Hey, I've just seen a show that you did about me, and you obviously know more about me than I know about me, and I'm trying to do a book, and how would you like to write my book?" Well, I was over the moon, obviously. So that's, the benefits of being able to do something like this were huge. And yet I didn't get any complaints from ITC or any of the companies that were connected in a lot of the clips that I was using for Rocky's promo that I put together, or the show that I did, and consequently I got work from that. So it's very interesting. But it's the struggle with copyright that I've always had an issue with. And so on the basis of that, the clip show, or that type of show that I had been doing, it's very complicated. It's very difficult to run with. And if I look at what I'm planning ahead, lockdown has given me pause for thought. For instance, I wanted to do something different, and I have a radio show. It's a podcast pretty much, but it's a radio show. It's called The John Orty Experience, and you can find it wherever you find your podcasts. Many podcasts available. Wherever you find your podcast, you may find The John Orty Experience, which is a radio show. It's music based. It's my favourite music, and I get to do the sort of DJ thing, and I link a lot of the shows together. It's about an hour long, and I find that hugely therapeutic, which I've done since lockdown. Johnny, it's Athena. Hello, my darling. Hope you're well. You're probably living it up there in LA currently and having a marvellous time. She buys a new leotard every week. It's unbelievable. She's so trapped in the 80s, but we love her desperately. So that's what I started doing. I did the John Orty Experience, and then I also did a chat show thing called Hollywood Talk of Fame. Two plugs: John Orty Experience and Hollywood Talk of Fame. Lots of old interviews from old Hollywood stars that maybe, if somebody said to you, "Oh, did you see that interview with so-and-so the other night?" You may have missed it. I've now converted them to audio, and it's a podcast, and you can listen to it. And I think they still work as an audio, as an audio event. So there's the music show is every Tuesday, and the interview show is every Friday. So that's what I've been doing. And then I was also asked by the very good David Zaritsky from the Bond Experience, as Pete Brooker refers to him. See, she's living it up in LA and listening to me. You could do no finer thing on a Friday evening, my darling. I sincerely hope you're well. It's lovely to see you. So I was asked by Mr. Zaritsky there at the Bond Experience, and my colleague Chris Wright from JBR, James Bond Radio, to assist with Operation Freefall. Operation Freefall was a day-long event that covered many, many topics as far as Bond was concerned. And I'd seen some of the stuff that they'd done before. There was a fashion panel. I seem to remember the clothes of Bond, that sort of thing. And I watched that, and I was fascinated by the amount of work that went into it, because obviously I knew some of the guys that were doing some of the spots there, which Pete Brooker, for instance, I mentioned him a moment ago. As I say, he refers to David as the Bond Experience. But Pete Brooker has a thing called From Tailors with Love, and if you're not familiar with that, do check it out. I think it's great. It's an all-round podcast about Bond, but he has the clothes of Bond, and accessories and bits and pieces. Recently, his most recent podcast was that he was concerned that maybe the market was getting a bit drowned as far as Bond is concerned, and I found that a very interesting point. I understand his point, because he does a great many things in connection with Bond. Many podcasts do. They're interested in the cars of Bond, or the clothes, or the locations. Martin Mulder and Uwe tracks of 007, all those. These guys, they go to extraordinary lengths for tours and to go to the locations. The drinks of Bond. There's a great guy on Instagram, and I don't know whether he's on here at the moment, but if you check him out, he's the Ties of Bond. It's called Tie Another Day. That's what it's called. Do check him out as well. So if you were ever you watch a Bond movie and go, that's a nice tie, he'll give you the information about where to find it, right? I mean, this guy's terrific. So all of these people are very, very important to the family, the Bond family, who come together on a regular basis to enjoy the films, have a laugh and a joke, plan for the future, meet up, do everything that you want to do in connection with the movies. So this whole thing, and of course, myself and Chris were involved in this thing, and there was rehearsals, and it wasn't just thrown together. This was a very, very important thing. And we really enjoyed it. We had a great day. It was superly done. Very, very good indeed. And the support for the event was incredible. And it struck me that the stunts and Bond, because we did a section all about that, Bond was excited since World War II. Never. Well, yes, exactly. From that was the whole thing with reference to Fleming and that thing from, because obviously Ian Fleming from the war, and that was where his connection with the character, or his idea about the character stemmed from. So it was. It struck me that stunts, which is my passion, and Bond are still very, very excitable. People still want to know about them. And on the strength of that, yes, I am making notes, folks, in case you're thinking, good Lord, what's he doing? You don't just rush into these things and panic like I did earlier. So I've made some notes. But it struck me that Bond and stunts are still a very exciting part of the franchise that maybe haven't been touched fully. I'm lucky enough that I have connections with people inside the industry, and they are many of them have worked on Bond over the years. Many of them have coordinated Bond or have taken a very active role in big gags, as they are known, but big stunts within a number of James Bond pictures. With that in mind, I had then, over the last, I would say 25 years, 30 years, been constantly making notes about, oh, that's so-and-so, that's an interesting story about so-and-so, and then getting it verified from somebody else, and then going to the individual concerned and saying, I heard this about you on this picture, can I confirm it? I just want to make sure it's right from a factual point of view. That's what happens when you go back to doing the magazines and the journalism thing that I used to do before, is that you continually go back and double check, which is why it's always very disconcerting when you read so much garbage in newspapers and magazines about certain individuals who then deny it. They deny it because they haven't been approached with reference to it to have an opinion. But what I've been able to do over a very long period of time is to go to these individuals concerned and ask them about certain questions and confirm it. Consequently, what happened not that long ago was that I had finished Rocky's book, still available now, folks, Jump, Rocky Jump. And on the strength of that, I had been initially approached to say, hey, why don't you do a book about Bond? Why don't you do a book about the stunts of Bond? And at the time, and if I may use Daniel Craig for a moment as my spirit animal, to maybe channel my comment, but I may have said something along the lines of, I'd rather slit my throat than do this, which is not entirely true. I mean, I was enjoying it enormously, but had concerned with the fact that maybe I was written out and didn't want to do it immediately. But then over a period of time, thought, well, if there is going to be something about this, maybe I should do it myself, and I would be quite interested to do that. And so I then knuckled down and decided to write it, and wrote it relatively quickly, I must admit, but of course I'd got 30 years worth of information. So consequently, that's what had happened, and a book has now been written about the stunts of Bond and about the action in Bond, taking on board all of those conversations that I'd had with many stunt people and coordinators in the past, and new performers who have just got on the register not that long ago, and they worked on some recent bonds, and they've been very good to talk to me. And a great many of these individuals you will not know. You don't know who they are because they're not credited. It's one of the things that we touch on in the book, but the amount of credits that happen on film and those who actually work do differ. And in certain cases, they differ significantly. And so there is a section in the book which lists every single performer that ever worked on every Bond movie. All of them. Credit where credit is due is the most for me anyway. I mean, if you're going to credit somebody, you have to credit everybody, and so consequently, that's what it's going to be. And the book is called "Ever Heard of Evel Knievel," which a great many of you, if you are Bond fans, will know. Comes from The Man with the Golden Gun and the line that Roger Moore says to the sheriff just before he does possibly the most unbelievable 360 roll with the car. So that's the idea. It's going to happen. It's written. I've got a few bits and pieces just to finalise, but I hope to have it out later this year is the idea. In the stores for Christmas, folks. That's the plan. And in line with that comes the YouTube channel, because obviously at the moment, and what has been happening very recently, is that I've been putting little bits and pieces together, maybe a stunt reel that I've been creating for the Stunt Pod, which is the other podcast that I'm involved in, the Stunt Pod. If you check that out, type the Stunt Pod into Gmail or any other Gmail. What am I talking about? Google rather. And with the top listing there, you'll find us. But we've done many interviews with many people. But there's a series that we're doing at the present time called the Legends series. The word is maybe overused. So the legends are those individuals who are sadly no longer with us, but made a major impact on the business and on cinema or film. So we are doing that, and I've created videos for those. And we did one which was AJ Bakunas, young stuntman who sadly died in his prime, and also we've just yesterday, in fact, came out with Roy Alon, who was a wonderful stuntman, a British stuntman, sadly passed away in 2006. But taught so many people so much and was very good to me in allowing me access to get to meet individuals that I only knew as names on screen in the past. But he was very kind to me. So we've done that, and I've put those videos up, but there hasn't been anything new for quite some time. So the idea, in conjunction with the release of the book, will be, and I'm working on these currently, but the idea will be to have a number of videos which are in relation to a particular Bond movie. So each of them, there will be 24 done. There will be 25, but obviously we'll have to wait. We all have to wait, you know. So there will be 25 videos in total, one per movie, highlighting the action sequences, the individuals concerned, and maybe some little bits and pieces from the individuals if they're still around to say, you know, this is what I did, etc., etc. So that's the idea for that, and I want it to work really as a kind of Right, okay. I'm just trying to understand some of the messages that are popping up on screen here. Somebody was talking about World War One and Leeds. I didn't catch all of that, but I'll go back and read it shortly. So I want this book to be, the book and the video to work as like a companion. So maybe if you have the book, then you can go through the videos and it might explain, or you may understand more with reference to what it is that I'm trying to explain in this particular sequence. So you can watch the sequence, you can check the sequence out. And I say this, and again, I've approached Eon and have said to them, this is what I'm planning to do, this is what I'm hoping to cover. So far, with reference to use of clips, I've had nothing back to say, no, wait a minute, you can't do that. But I haven't had anything also have had nothing positive either. So I'm still going to check with them just to be on the safe side with reference to it. But as far as, because obviously I've had some issues with copyright in the past. But, so that's the idea. It's in line with the release of the book, and you go from movie to movie and explain what the situation is and try and get a better idea of the action in the Bond pictures. And this, again, started really with the project Freefall that we did, Operation Freefall, that myself and Chris did, talking about the sequences, maybe understanding the sequences a little better, because I received a great deal of feedback from individuals who didn't know. They weren't aware of some of the situations that went on when you're watching these movies. Boom, it's gone. That sequence is gone, that gag is gone, but they don't understand the many, many hours or weeks or months of planning that goes into these particular sequences, and how important that is. We've been having a long-running conversation on Twitter. If you want to follow me on Twitter, by the way, if you're not doing so already, at Stunts Central, go and visit me over there. But we've been having long conversations, many of us, with reference to Bond, and how the Mission Impossible pictures and Tom Cruise have kind of changed direction slightly and are pushing action in a different route. Many are concerned that it will take away from it, and many think, yes, bring it on, let's have more of that. So the balance, it's still in either way. Me personally, I'd rather not have the lead actor hanging outside of an aeroplane or going to space and doing all of these things for real. I think that's quite dangerous. I would much rather that his face was superimposed in a CGI way, but done in a clever way that you couldn't decipher it, even if he lies about it. I'm prepared to accept, under the circumstances, from an old Hollywood perspective, that a great many of the individuals that were working in the stunt business at the time weren't allowed to talk about working with actors. They weren't allowed to talk about doubling actors, because that wasn't something that was allowed. However, I do believe that, yes, Athena has just mentioned, yes, we all admire Tom Cruise, and I think he has, cojones the size of Belgium. There's no doubt about that. But he's the actor of the movie. He broke a limb. He broke a leg on. He broke a leg on the. You remember, what was it? Ghost Protocol? Was that the one? No, Fallout, wasn't it? It was Fallout, where he jumped from building to building and broke a leg and hobbled his way out of the scene. The skydiving sequence in that, broke a foot, I beg your pardon, you're quite right. The skydiving, the sequence out of that, was filmed afterwards. So, not only had he got to get over that extraordinary, yes, George Formby did do many of his own stunts, that's right. He also did all of his own uke playing, but he didn't wear the trousers. His wife was, she was the one, you had to convince her first, I think, to bump the money up with the production company before he went anywhere near a back projection. But Tom Cruise did all of that skydiving sequence after he broke his foot. So, that's where there are situations. If you look at Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, is a wonderful example of stunt people saving the production. Harrison Ford was injured. I forget, what was it, gallstones? Maybe it was gallstones. It was something. It was a condition, and he had to be rushed off for an operation. But they couldn't close the production down like they would normally do. So Vic, a hernia, I beg your pardon, thank you very much, Jeff. It is indeed, had a hernia. And Vic Armstrong saved the day. They used him in close-up, in that mine sequence. That mine sequence there, when Indy swings from one side of the mine to the other and lands and gets rid of the bullwhip. It's Vic. It's Vic in close-up. I mean, he's being used a lot and saved that production. And the fact that they were able to go on and do that, I think that's important. So that's my opinion. I'm not disputing that he is TC is a very excitable box office prospect, and every time he's hooked to a project, the money goes up. He's also executive producer, so when he says, I'm going to be hanging outside that plane, you're not going to stop him. Daniel says to me, Pat Roach, was he a stuntman? No, he wasn't. He was a wrestler. He was a wrestler. He was turned out to be a very good actor. In point of fact, worked a lot with Vic Armstrong through the years. I managed to get him on a number of projects. The indie pictures, Never Say Never Again, Red Sonja, all of these pictures which had him involved. And of course, UK viewers will remember Our Wiedersehen Pet, which was a comedy show which happened on a Friday night, and he was one of the characters there. But no, he wasn't a stuntman, but he was used regularly as a heavy, but understood a good fight because of his wrestling background. So he was used quite often in action sequences in that way, as many were, I think, over there. In some of those earlier pictures, there was wrestlers. Mick McManus was another British wrestler. And some of the TV shows, I think, in the early days, the Avengers, some of the live shows, they used some of those. Jackie Pallow, I seem to remember being a wrestler as well and being involved in some of those early shows. So yeah, that's the idea. And if we are in a situation where Bond goes in a slightly different direction, well, okay, but I wouldn't want it to go too far. Having said that, the book covers everything else. So that's the idea. It's Ever Heard of Evel Knievel, the definitive guide to stunts and action in the Bond films, written in conjunction with the performers that did the work. All of those performers, and hats off to all of them for allowing me to contact them and go, you don't know me, but... and then explain the situation to them, for them to go, hey, I remember that. Yeah, that's fine, I'll be involved. And, for them to tell me some wonderful, wonderful stories that have never been heard before. And believe me, if they'd been heard, I'd have heard them. And that's the point I'm making. These are brand new. And working in conjunction with some terrific second-year directors, Bond directors, and stunt coordinators and performers. So it's a great... it's a great thrill to be involved in that, and that hopefully will be out at the end of the year in time for Christmas. That's the plan. So we'll keep you posted as far as that's concerned. So that's the plan. So that's the YouTube channel. It may be a bit quiet. I've had 4,500 subscribers, I think, since it started, which is nice. I'm thrilled by it. Don't get me wrong. Every new person that subscribes, it's a great bonus. It's a great thrill. But I do feel sometimes that I haven't done very much in order to warrant that kind of following. When you compare certain individuals on certain pages who throw the kitchen sink, David, if you're still out there, Mr. Zaritsky from the Bond Experience, you are one of these individuals that does throw the kitchen sink at it, and other people will be sitting there thinking, Jesus, how am I supposed to cope with that? Because it's a massive quantity of output, and you do feel certain times that maybe you individuals have eased off because there may be a bit too much content. But I'm not so sure. I think that, as I say, I just go back to what Pete Brooker was talking about in his podcast this week, is that even though he believes that he doesn't want to have extinguished all the avenues as far as Bond is concerned, he does want to touch on other subjects. And I completely applaud that, because that's technically what I was doing. I was touching on as many other options as I possibly could, other movies, so that we are in a situation... the Bond community has exploded over the last two... Yes, it has. Quite right, it has. Where people have maybe got to a situation where they've looked at stuff and thought, I want to do something like that. Maybe I've got something to say. And you can look at that with the podcasts that are available now. There's so many, It's not what you got, it's what you do with it. This is very true. And of course, you had Bond Brain. I almost read that as Bond Brian, but it is Bond Brain. Quite right. Everybody who is Bond connected in some shape or form, who has a tiny little crumb of the pie, is in a situation to go, hey, I've got something to offer, and they do it. And I think it's terrific. I don't know of any other franchise where this happens. Maybe it happens in the Star Wars franchise. I don't know. I'm not the biggest Star Wars fan. Sci-fi. Well, okay. The sci-fi and fantasy for me, and I draw chasm between the two. But you know, I'm not the biggest fan of that. Maybe there are other individuals out there who are, you know, doing wonderful, wonderful things for other franchises, and I think that maybe should be the case. That all this, it's referred to as a family, and I think that's exactly what it is. Lots of people coming together, shared passion, talk about it, explore, expand, pass the information on. So that's really all I wanted to say. I just wanted to say, look, it's, you know, I've done a little bit with the YouTube. It's been great fun so far, but it's eased off a bit. But it's eased off because I'm planning to do something else. So that's the idea. It's been lovely to have you here, folks. I hope you've enjoyed this. What is it now? 45 minutes. Good Lord. How time flies when I have a beer in my hand. The sun is out, by the way, and it's hammering down with rain. And you can still hear that. Quite heavy too. And I've been moving house today. So it's been a world of excitement. We start moving today, and we have until the 12th of August to finally vacate this place. It's so like Noah the movie. That's what they're doing outside the. There's animals queued in pairs outside, queuing up, waiting to get in. So yeah, moving house and doing all of that. It's been lovely. Thank you very much for taking the time out of your day to come and say hello. And we'll do it again. We'll do it again at some point. I think that's the plan. So I salute each and every one of you. God bless you all. I hope you have. Oh, my son's just turned up. Hello, Harry. Waving to Harry. Yeah, turning up finally. I'll talk to you later, mate. All right, that's how we communicate these days. Normally through some sort of new communication. Thanks, folks. Enjoy. Have a great afternoon, great weekend, and I look forward to catching up with you all very soon. Look after yourselves. Lots of love. Bye for now.